FBI agents have spent all day at the Emergency Medical Response Building removing boxes and bags.
In America, when an ambulance turns the corner with lights flashing and sirens screaming, traffic parts like water. No one hesitates. No one doubts. An ambulance means help is coming. But in 2024, federal investigators uncovered a secret that shattered that trust. For nearly 4 years, a network of private ambulance companies across Texas had been operating under a dark double life. By day, paramedics responded to calls, transported patients, and stood by at community events. By night, some of those same ambulances became high-speed couriers for one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. The scheme was almost flawless. Ambulances were rarely searched. Border checkpoints waved them through. Police officers never imagined stopping emergency vehicles racing toward patients. That unquestioned access became the perfect shield. Hidden compartments were installed behind oxygen tank panels. Drug packages were sealed inside modified medical supply containers. Fake dispatch logs were created to justify suspicious route changes. Even fabricated 911 calls were used to explain emergency runs that never existed. To the public, they were lifesavers. To federal agents watching quietly from a distance, something wasn't adding up. It started with one ambulance spotted at 2:43 a.m. in a warehouse district with no patient inside. That single sighting would unravel the largest corruption case ever tied to emergency medical services, in what investigators would soon discover wasn't just criminal, it was a betrayal.
Covering a new report that says federal agents threatened to shoot and arrest an ambulance driver.
The investigation began quietly. DEA analysts reviewing cartel surveillance footage noticed something unusual. The same ambulance appeared multiple times at suspected drug transfer points. No hospital reports, no patient intake logs, no emergency records, just patterns. When agents traced ownership of the ambulance company, they hit a wall of shell corporations registered through out-of-state LLCs. On paper, the business looked legitimate. Clean audits, active licenses, proper inspections. But financial records told another story. Several paramedics employed by the company were earning modest salaries, around $40,000 a year, yet bank deposits revealed unexplained cash transfers. Luxury vehicles were purchased, expensive homes appeared under relatives' names, vacations abroad were paid in full. Someone was paying them well. Wire transfers linked the ambulance company to a chain of investment firms with indirect connections to cartel financing networks. That was the breakthrough. A federal task force formed immediately. DEA, FBI, and state investigators working side by side. GPS tracking data revealed ambulances frequently deviated from approved routes. Some made unexplained stops at warehouses. Others crossed regional checkpoints during late-night hours, with emergency lights briefly activated to avoid scrutiny. What shocked investigators most? Some of these ambulances were responding to real emergency calls while carrying hidden narcotics. Patients were unknowingly being transported in vehicles loaded with illegal drugs concealed inches from life-saving equipment. It wasn't just trafficking, it was recklessness, and it put lives at risk. By summer 2024, investigators identified dozens of suspected participants, but they needed undeniable proof, and they were about to get it.
Business here. The FBI has been on the scene for several hours searching an EMS business.
Paramedics warrants were executed quietly at first. One ambulance in Houston was pulled aside for inspection. Behind a removable interior panel, agents found a professionally installed compartment containing 25 kilograms of narcotics. Another unit in Dallas revealed modified oxygen cylinders, outwardly authentic, internally hollowed and repurposed for smuggling. The sophistication stunned even veteran investigators. This wasn't random corruption, it was organized engineering. Over weeks of coordinated searches, more than 50 ambulances were found with similar modifications. Some compartments required magnetic triggers to open. Others were sealed within defibrillator casings. Medical supply shipments were also compromised. Boxes labeled as IV fluids and trauma kits concealed vacuum-sealed drug packages. Inventory logs were altered to disguise missing equipment. Internal dispatch records showed falsified patient transfers that never occurred. But the most disturbing discovery came from intercepted communications. Recorded conversations referenced drivers on payroll and emergency green lanes. Payments were coded as bonus shifts. Schedules were aligned with shipment arrivals. This was systematic. Investigators concluded that dozens of paramedics knowingly participated. Not coerced, not misled, but fully aware. They were being paid separately from official payroll accounts through layered financial transfers designed to avoid detection. By October, the task force had enough evidence. 78 individuals were identified. 12 ambulance companies were under suspicion. The operation was given a name, Operation Silent Siren. The arrests would need to happen all at once, because once the sirens stopped, everyone would know.
Along with the FBI, is conducting a search of the ambulance company here.
And they moved. November 12th, 5:15 a.m. Simultaneous raids unfolded across 7 Texas cities. In Houston, agents entered company headquarters just as morning crews arrived for shift changes. In Dallas, a paramedic was detained beside an ambulance prepared for dispatch. In San Antonio, investigators executed warrants at both offices and private residences. There was no chaos, no dramatic chases, just shock. Fleet vehicles were impounded, warehouses were searched, financial documents were seized. By the end of the day, 78 paramedics were in federal custody. 12 private ambulance companies were shut down. Tons of narcotics were recovered from vehicles and storage facilities. Federal prosecutors announced charges ranging from drug trafficking and conspiracy to racketeering and misuse of emergency vehicles in criminal operations. Licenses were suspended immediately. Communities were left stunned. Tenants living near ambulance depots called property managers asking what had happened. Patients who had been transported months earlier wondered if they had been unknowingly placed in danger. The betrayal ran deeper than crime statistics. Emergency medical services operate on trust. When someone calls 911, they believe help is coming, not harm. Now, that trust had fractures. But the story wasn't over, because the courtroom would determine how history remembered this
FBI
case.
agents have spent all day at the Emergency Medical Response Building removing boxes and bags.
Several
Trials began the following year. Prosecutors presented GPS logs, financial transfers, hidden compartment designs, surveillance footage, and testimony from cooperating witnesses. Defense attorneys argued financial pressure and manipulation, but evidence showed repeated participation over years. Some defendants accepted plea agreements, others chose trial. Sentences ranged from decades in federal prison to life imprisonment for coordinators who orchestrated ownership structures and payments. The judge's words during sentencing echoed nationwide. When emergency professionals exploit public trust for profit, the damage extends far beyond the crime itself. It weakens the foundation of public safety. The 12 companies were dissolved, assets were seized, proceeds were redirected towards strengthening legitimate emergency medical services in underserved communities. Texas implemented sweeping reforms, enhanced ownership transparency requirements, randomized vehicle inspections, GPS oversight for private ambulance fleets, financial audits for emergency contractors. Across the country, regulators began reviewing private emergency transport systems more closely. The scandal became a warning. Criminal organizations adapt. They seek systems built on trust because trust lowers defenses. But this case proved something else. Even the most carefully disguised operations can be uncovered, even sirens can be investigated, and even trusted uniforms are not above the law. Because when institutions are infiltrated, someone is always watching.